So what happens when you're a Catholic priest in Spain and you say some true things about Islam, like that its people are very violent and are killing Christians all over the world? Well, you get accused of a hate crime and you face jail time. That's literally what happened to Father Custodio Ballester recently. He was recently found guilty of hate crime. We're going to read his article. We're going to go through this really silly, wild story, and we're going to talk about all the facts. We're going to start with lifesitenews.com, their article, Spanish priest found guilty of hate crime after criticizing Muslim persecution of Christians. Barcelona priest, Father Custodio Ballester, was found guilty and now faces prison time for warning that Islam does not allow dialogue with Christianity. Sentencing for a Spanish priest who last week was found guilty of making Islamophobic comments more than 7 years ago has Catholics as well as free speech advocates concerned. In February, Father Custodio Ballester was summoned by a regional court in Spain to respond to charges that he had committed a hate crime for calling attention to unjust treatment Christians received in Islamic majority countries. Yeah, a hate crime for telling the truth about the situation of Christians around the world. Ballester, who serves as a parish priest in Barcelona, was charged with violating Spanish law in 2020 when the state prosecutor in Catalonia claimed that an article Ballester wrote in 2016 titled "The Impossible Dialogue with Islam" met the criteria of a hate crime. This is wild stuff. We're actually going to read through his article. It's not very long. And I'm going to ask you guys, like, do you see anything in here that amounts to a hate crime? Okay, we'll do that in just a second. Ballester wrote his essay in response to a pastoral letter by his superior, the Archbishop of Barcelona, Cardinal Juan José Omella, titled "The Necessary Dialogue with Islam." In his rebuttal, Ballester wrote, quote, "This new reactivation of the Christian-Muslim dialogue, paralyzed by the alleged imprudences on the part of the late Pope Benedict XVI, is very far from becoming a reality. Islam does not allow for dialogue. For Islam, either you believe or you are an infidel who must be subdued one way or another." Is that the truth in Islam? Does that amount to a hate crime? Well, first, let's turn to just some images of Father Custodio Ballester. This is what he looks like. If you guys didn't know who he was before this video. Now let's turn to the actual article that allegedly contains statements that amount to a hate crime. I mean, maybe we should talk about what a hate crime is in the first place. A hate crime is when you say something that incites some sort of crime on the part of others. Okay, you're inciting something. It's not like you say something that is offensive. That's not a hate crime. A hate crime is when you say or do something that causes other people to do bad stuff. And so that's what we're looking for. Like, does anything in here incite other people to do bad things, in this case against Muslims? Let's just start reading. And this is an English translation of the original Spanish, so it might not be 100% accurate, but let's just go ahead and start reading. "Fight against those who have been given the scripture and do not believe in Allah or the last day, nor forbid what Allah and his messenger have forbidden, nor practice the religion of truth until they, in humiliation, pay the tribute directly." That's in the Quran, Surah 9:29. That's how he starts his article. Very spicy. I don't think Monsignor Juan José Omella was particularly inspired when he wrote his Sunday letter entitled "The Necessary Dialogue with Islam." So this is obviously a response to this article. We're not going to read the other one. This renewed revival of Christian-Muslim dialogue, paralyzed by the alleged foolery of the much-missed Benedict XVI, is far from a reality. Islam does not allow for dialogue. You either believe or you are an infidel who must be subdued one way or another. I did also want to mention that this letter is, I don't think it amounts to a hate crime, but it is nevertheless pretty spicy and contains some very interesting facts about Islam and persecution throughout the world. So you guys definitely want to stick around and just hear what he has to say, because this stuff is pretty important. It's like saying with the goodwill in the world that Catholics must maintain an open and conciliatory dialogue with pro-abortionists, euthanasia advocates, and promoters of gender ideology. Well, no, that's not it. It's one thing not to despise people for what they believe and think and not persecute them for it, and quite another to have put our faith into hibernation so that it doesn't clash with progressive dogma and the ideology that has declared war on our faith. With the very serious and added inconvenience that they've also declared war on people. In countries where Muslims hold power, Christians are brutally persecuted and murdered. What dialogue are we talking about then? And the final straw is that in order to engage in dialogue, in addition to silencing our faith out of prudence, we have to bow down to theirs. It's the new style of the new era. Dialogue not only with Islam, with the Islamic faith, but also with the new social and moral engineering and its aberrations. It's the trend. Do you guys see anything in here so far? Anything that amounts to a hate crime? Is he encouraging other people to commit crimes against a protected group? Do you see any of that in here? I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing what the case here is. When in January 2011, a car bomb detonated by Islamists at the gates of the Coptic Cathedral in Alexandria left 21 dead and more than 70 injured among the faithful attending New Year's Mass, Pope Benedict XVI raised his voice to denounce that so many then and now want to silence or gloss over the fierce persecution of Christians in Muslim countries. This act, Benedict confirmed, offends God and all humanity. This vile act of death, such as placing bombs near the homes of Christians in Iraq to force them to leave, offends God and all humanity, who just yesterday prayed for peace and began a new year with hope. Okay, still not seeing any hate speech. The Islamic response was swift. The Grand Imam of Al-Azhar University considered these words unacceptable interference. I do not agree with the Pope's point of view, he stated, and I wonder why the Pope was not called for the protection of Muslims when they are being killed in Iraq. He was referring to the supreme leaders of Christians, and he thought it was terrible that he defended them when Muslims were killing them. And you have to get inside the Moor's head to understand them. Now, this is really like the only sentence in this entire article that I can even see as remotely amounting to hate speech, but it doesn't do like, okay, so Moors apparently in Spanish is like a derogatory term for Muslims. And so what he's saying is that you have to get inside this, derogatory term for Muslims head to understand them. Now, that's obviously like supposed to be offensive, but being offensive does not amount to a hate crime. Okay, that's just not what it means at all. That's protected speech. Okay, you can offend people and call them names and be rude to them. That's protected speech. Maybe he shouldn't have done this in this article, but that does not amount to a hate crime. Okay, a hate crime, again, is when you incite some sort of persecution, some sort of discrimination or violence on the part of this group. Okay, you want other people to do something bad to this group. That's not what's happening here. I don't see that at all in this sentence, even if maybe he shouldn't have said it or been a little bit nicer about it. But what he's obviously saying here is that you need to get inside their head in order to understand why they're persecuting Christians in the way that they are. And so this part you guys definitely need to pay attention to. And again, this is a Catholic priest making these arguments. Christians in Muslim territory are tolerated and protected. They are dhimmi. That is, if they pay tribute to Islamic power by paying the jizya, a special tax paid only by Christians in order to practice their faith without being persecuted or condemned for it. Christian minorities in Muslim-majority countries like Syria or Iraq are forced to pay the jizya to avoid being killed or enslaved. And this, of course, is a special state of grace that can be terminated whenever the religious or political powers deem it appropriate. That is why they consider it an intolerable interference for Benedict XVI to interfere in the internal affairs of a Muslim country, no matter how many dhimmi Christians they kill. Infidels are the property of the state, which can dispose of them as it sees fit, either by collecting the infidelity tax or by exterminating them. What does the Pope think he is, trying to impose standards of conduct on Muslim countries? So again, like I sound like a broken record, and I sort of am, but there is no hate speech going on here. He's literally just pointing out that in Islam, Christians are are forced to pay the jizya, otherwise they are either enslaved or they are killed. That's all he's pointing out here. Okay, and truth, like true statements, unless you're using these true statements to incite violence or incite something else, if he were doing that, it would be a hate crime, but he's not. He's just pointing out how Islam is, to put it gently, problematic. Okay, that's all he's doing. Then, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar University, the same one who harshly criticized Benedict XVI, Ahmed Al-Taib, will come and embrace Pope Francis. But that will not change the nature of an Islam founded on a direct and immediate revelation that becomes a book, the Quran, indisputable and uninterpretable. As it is written, it must be believed. Prayer and almsgiving, the pilgrimage to Mecca, and also jihad and the extermination of the infidels. And the meeting itself is not the message. The encounter between Francis and Grand Imam does not in itself transform a reality that is hundreds of years old, nor the story of Muhammad, the prophet who spent his entire life going from raid to raid, subduing those who opposed him with blood and fire. The meeting cannot be the message. A hug and a photo mean nothing if one lacks the courage to say that Islam has evident elements of violence in the Quran and in the life of Muhammad. Gotta love this Catholic priest. If one continues to say that Islam is a religion of peace, one only creates confusion and perplexity, and especially if one lacks the courage to place opposite the figure of Muhammad the warrior, the image of the crucified one, the Lord of the universe. A good difference, isn't it? Or is it imprudent to remind Muslims of the distinct nature of the Christian religion? Man, this article is... as the kids say these days, it's very based. Okay, it's not. I don't see any hate crimes being committed here. I see just a lot of based statements made on behalf of a priest. And let no one come to me with the refrain that Christianity also contains violence, because there are Christians who kill their mothers-in-law, since violating the commandments has never been endorsed by Holy Scripture, neither now nor ever. And let no one tell us today what Christianity was like yesterday, which recounts many episodes in which it was also imposed by the sword, condemning it fiercely, of course, to argue that Christianity was very bad, but Islam is pure peace. Let us not fool ourselves. The Islam of today and always, which is what we are trying to reconcile with Christianity, with one hand promotes charitable works, while with the other it arms itself to annihilate all those who refuse to recognize Allah and Muhammad as the last and definitive prophet of God. All right, now that we've seen that there is absolutely no hate speech in this article, let's now turn back to the LifeSite News article and continue where we left off. Ballester also previously made remarks critical of LGBT ideology. Ballester's case involves Father Jesus Calvo and journalist Armando Robles. They had been accused of making Islamophobic remarks on a 2017 podcast by the Association of Spanish Muslims Against Islamophobia. The Malaga provincial court handed down its ruling earlier this week. Ballester told Catholic news agency that his statements, quote, have never been discriminatory or hateful. He also said, quote, they want to use me as an example so that others censor themselves. It's a really good point, because if you are being, targeted in this way, then it can actually cause other people to back down. That's what we saw with Charlie Kirk. Like, people are starting to censor themselves because they don't want to become a target for the left. Let's continue here. Violating Spain's hate crime laws carries a penalty of anywhere from 1 to 4 years in prison with additional financial penalties. Ballester says that he expects his sentencing may be delayed due to political pressure, and that he will appeal to the European Court of Human Rights if he is sentenced with jail time. Several dozen supporters held signs at the courthouse when the decision was handed down. Law firm Abogados Cristano has collected nearly 30,000 signatures on a petition supporting Ballester's innocence. Clergy in Spain have largely remained silent, however. CNA reports that Cardinal O'Mella, quote, has only offered private words of support without issuing a public statement. Yeah, we need to be doing more than that. We need to be doing more than that for this based Catholic priest who is speaking out against Islam. People are very angry about the excessive sentences being sought for hate crimes, which are comparable to those sought for sexual assault or leaving someone paralyzed in a fight, Ballester told CNA. Yeah, that is important. If the same sentence that's being handed down for something like leaving someone paralyzed in a fight is being handed out for a quote-unquote hate crime, which we've read the article and we didn't see any hate crimes in there, yeah, that's pretty bad. When previously asked whether he was prepared to spend 3 years in prison if convicted, Ballester said, quote, it doesn't seem right to be convicted for something I've said, but in Spain, anything is possible. But if I am convicted, there will no longer be Spain. Sorry, let me start over. But if I am convicted, this will no longer be Spain, but Pakistan, where you can be killed for blaspheming the Quran or Muhammad. There is no true right of speech. I just cannot speak today. There is no longer any true right to free speech in Spain. According to Islamic Sharia law, Christians and Jews who refuse to convert to Islam are not recognized as full citizens, but considered semi-slaves called dhimmi, who have to pay a special tax called jizya. The Open Doors Word Watch list shows that the majority of the top 50 countries in which Christians are most persecuted are Islamic states. So what are we to make of this? Well, if I'm right that there is no hate speech in this article that we read, then it at least sets a really bad precedent. Okay, and this is happening in Spain, a very civilized nation. This is happening. So the question is, when is this going to start to trickle down to other nations where they have these laws of protected speech and stuff? When the line between protected speech and hate speech can get a little bit blurry. And so what is that line? How do we know that we're not going to get into a similar situation over in the US? I mean, we're seeing it in the UK, obviously in the UK right now. So when is it going to bleed over to the US? How long can we speak out against Islam before we're going to get shut down is the question. That's the question that this raises. So something has to be done. Like that petition that was signed that was mentioned in an article, like maybe we need to go find that and sign it ourselves. I don't even know if that's possible, but we have to start thinking about the reality of this. Like YouTube is they're eventually going to kowtow to larger corporations, credit card companies, and if people are going to speak out against Islam, it may be shut down at some point. So pretty bad precedent, pretty bad stuff. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. See you guys soon.